Welcome, everybody. I'm going to ask you just to stand for a few minutes. We're going to do a prayer to start well. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Almighty and eternal Father, we thank you for the gift of your Son, for his passion, death, and resurrection that we're going to celebrate in these next days during the Paschal Triduum. And we thank you also for the gift also of Tim, here present. He has also a degree in archaeology to help us to understand all the more how real, historical is the Passion of Christ. We want, through the intercession of Blessed Virgin Mary, to ask you, Eternal Father, to give us the gift of listening everything you and your Holy Spirit, through your Son, wants us to learn today, so that we can put it into practice in our daily life in the next days, weeks, months to come. And we want also to ask you to give us the gift of a tongue that can explain well to people, both to Tim and to myself, that we can be clear in our talk, and that you can really learn everything the Lord wants you to learn today. And so we pray Our Lady, we pray the Lord through Our Lady that it can happen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Please be seated. So thanks for coming. Welcome to all of you. As we say, sometimes a few, but good. So even with a few people, we can start great things. So today we have a Lent mission. Actually, we're on the last day of Lent, but it's good. I think it's a good time to do this, reflect on that, because we're going to reflect actually the Passion itinerary. So it's exactly what's going to happen in the next celebration. Good Thursday, Good Friday, mostly these 2 days, and then the resurrection, that will be for another mission. But we're going to speak also about the resurrection of Christ. So what happened to Christ in these few days? We know already a lot of things through the scriptures that we have already read other years. But here today we have Tim Denton, who is Amy's husband. I'm going to ask them to present themselves after. Who is from England, but he has also a degree of archaeology. And so it's going to help us to understand that there are some document, stones, coins, whatever else he's going to show us, that shows us that really the thing that the Bible says when you read at Mass and things are true. They really happened. There are some traces, some evidences that these people who accused Jesus or judged Jesus, like Caiaphas, who accused him of he was a high priest, or Pilate, who was the one in charge to judge him, or even Herod, who was also involved in the judgment, whatever. These people really historically existed, and we have traces of that. So we're going to go through this, and during this time, sometime I'm going to also try to connect this element to our life, especially our life struggles. sometimes we can be in struggle for whatever reason, that is connected with what happened to Jesus during his passion. And so, how we can overcome our struggles with the help of the example of Christ, and obviously also in the foresight of his resurrection, of his victory over sin, over death. But before I give the word to Tim, I want just to insist on that aspect. First of all, okay, you have this phrase, this sentence of Jesus in the Gospel of John, chapter 17. He was praying during the Last Supper. He was praying his Father and say, Father, your word is truth. The word of God, the Bible, what we received from the Father, is truth. Everything is true in it. That Jesus himself will say that. And it's important we're sure about this, us Catholic, because many people during the centuries had tried to say, well, the Bible, yeah, it's true, maybe just theologically speaking, but in matter of science, like biology or archaeology or history, that's not really true, and so on. But the popes, since scientists tried to dismantle and discredit the Bible, the Church always insisted through encyclical official document saying, wait a minute, no. The Bible, everything that is written there, everything that God meant through these people who were really inspired by God writing the books of the Bible, everything is true. There is no error, no mistake in any words of the Bible. That's the teaching of the Catholic Church. And so the archaeology and history is helping us also to confirm that. It's not that we need it to believe that the Bible is true. No, we don't really need to demonstrate that through archaeology. But it can help, to have a more wide understanding of really everything. Welcome, Sky. To have a wider understanding of, yes, the Catholic Church is not rejecting science. Actually, he's for science, a more wide understanding of science. Not just your own little discovery of one scientist who don't understand anything else that's what he discovered. But yeah, it's a whole picture. So the Church is always trying to get the whole picture. So everything that has been said in the Bible, everything that the archaeologists had discovered, or the historians were saying, comparing it, then through comparison of all the fields, you can reach a better understanding of what really the Bible is telling us. And so the Catechism of the Catholic Church summarized what many councils, many popes said before. God is the author of sacred scripture because He, God, inspired its human authors. He acts in them, and by means of them, He thus gives an assurance that their writings teach without error His saving truth. So, they were human people who were writing the Bible. They were even sinners. They were not completely perfect, besides Jesus who spoke, but He didn't write actually. He just spoke, and people write what He said. But all of them, even if they were sinners, imperfect, limited, they didn't have an understanding of the whole science law at the time of Jesus, everything. Whatever they wrote is true, because the Holy Spirit was guiding them. They were not just robots like in trance or whatever, without their capacities. They had their capacities, their faculties in control. But the Holy Spirit was using them providentially to write just only the thing that God wanted. And that's why I believe the Bible is completely true, without error. It's just a premise, important. And then we see that in the Catholic Church, there is a value, how do you say, the people in the Catholic Church from the first centuries until today had an esteem of different science, like also archaeology. So you can see, for example, Pope Francis, in 2020, when he wrote a letter, apostolic letter, about the scriptures in occasion of the 1600th anniversary of the death of Saint Jerome. Saint Jerome, he was the first saint to translate the Bible in Latin, because the Pope at this time, in about 400, end of 300, beginning of 400, the Pope Damasus told to Jerome, "Well, my friend, here in Rome, where almost nobody speak anymore Jewish or Greek. We need the Bible in Latin, so let's do it." So he sent Jerome to translate from the Hebrew the Old Testament and from the Greek the New Testament. Jerome, to do that, he went in the Holy Land. He lived there for years in Bethlehem, like the place where Jesus was born. He met a lot of Jewish people, experts, rabbi, whatever, to learn better how the Jewish language works, and he helped himself with also detailed archaeological research. So he went on the place to see what he could find for what? In order to point to a correct understanding of the inspired scriptures. So in order to translate well the scriptures, he helped himself also with archaeology. Saint Jerome, like many centuries ago. But today, we have also some Catholic Association of Archaeologists in Rome. They are working connected with the Pope, encouraged by several popes, to understand what happened to the first Christian martyrs in Rome. You know, they were living in the catacomb underneath the town because they were hiding from the Romans who were persecuting them. But also in the Holy Land, especially the Franciscan, they are keeping many places where Jesus was, you know, the tomb of Jesus, but also many other places or keeping by several organizations of the Catholic Church and other churches. They are trying to understand better what happened, or understand better the scriptures, also through digging in the ground and things like that. So, on that note, I'm gonna pass word to Tim, and he's gonna present himself, explain us why he's here. No, we're gonna just remain here for now. Go ahead.
Okay, a brief introduction to me. So I'm the custodian, groundskeeper, and odd jobs person at St. Elwar Church, mostly. I'm here because I'm married to Amy, whose father's side of her family is all on Doulage, and we've decided to try living here for a while, see how well that goes. 4 years down, we're still here, so it seems to be going well. My archaeological history. So Father used the term archaeology a lot just then. So what does that word mean? Archaeology is the scientific study of material culture. So it's the physical things that have been left from the past. It's not just what's written in books. Literally, our job is to go out and find the stuff and go, look, it's real. And that's what we're here to do. I have, so I said, a degree, a bachelor's degree in bioarchaeology. I specialised in organic things. I then had 2 seasons excavation experience in Pompeii under the archaeological project Pompeii. I did another season with the Norfolk Archaeological Unit as well, excavating. And that taught me that I'm not an excavator. I'm not the person that digs in the mud. I'm the person in the background who gets all the things, cleans them, and does the research and works out the storyline behind things. And I learned that best when I worked at a museum for 9 months, Norwich Castle Museum and Art Gallery. So from there on, I will now start using hopefully my skills in research, and hopefully everyone will learn something tonight. We'll see. So we're starting off where Jesus is arrested in the garden. So according to Luke, the people that arrest him are referred to as chief of the temple guards. So if it's temple guards, these are not Roman soldiers. These are not centurions. These are people that are coming from the Jewish courts. So he is under the Jewish temple law and going to a Jewish court, so the Sanhedrin. I'll probably say that about 3 different ways tonight. I always mess up the pronunciation. It's still the same word. But before we can even get into how the Jews had a court separate to the Romans, we need to give a very brief overview of Judea in the Roman Empire. So the success of the Roman Empire wasn't really its skills in a military, coming through, stomping its boots and taking over a country and going, now you're Roman. Their main skill was actually in the organisation of the provinces afterwards. So for a lot of provinces, everyone's religion is very deeply ingrained into who they are and their cultural identity in the period. So they go, look, we're polytheists, you're polytheists, you have one for a spring, so do we. They're kind of all similar, isn't that great? Just pay us taxes, we'll leave you alone. And that's kind of how they worked. But Judea was different. It was very different. It was a monotheist. So they only had one God. So that did not sit in the Roman terminology. So Judea got allowances compared to other provinces. So with the Jewish people, their religion and their law courts were very tied together. So they were allowed to keep their law courts and their manner in which they governed to a certain extent. They still had a Roman governor over them trying to keep the peace. At this time it was Pontius Pilate. But that's the main deal. But they had so many exclusions. So things like coinage, they did not have normal Roman coinage. They had their own special coinage that was created for them, so that iconography didn't offend the Jews. There was the biggest allowance they had, really, is that the Jews could not be enlisted into the Roman military. They were allowed not to do that at all because the Jews would not fight on the Sabbath. So, if you're Jewish, you did not get to go into the Roman military, which for most places would be a very big bonus. So this leads to the first trial of Jesus. This is in the Jewish court, the Sanhedrin. A full court would have 71 members. Now, for the location, most people think this was taken place should have taken place in the Hall of Hewn Stone, which was in Jerusalem. So it's a large area that was created specifically for these courts. But as we know from the Bible, they were taken to the house of the high priest, the house of Caiaphas. So it was unlikely that his home had a place big enough for a full court. So try and squeeze 71 people into any room, it gets small quickly. But then there's the question of, did the Romans allow them to have their full power, or was it an add-on thing? So it's kind of, most likely, it was a smaller court to fit inside his house, rather than using the Hall of Hewn Stone. The punishments that the Sanhedrin dealt out were things like stoning, burning, decapitation, scourging, and choking. None of them were mild for breaking Jewish law. They were all very serious and handed out by this court. So the Sanhedrin, as we find out later, gave the punishment of the death sentence for blasphemy to Saint Stephen. No, sorry, he got heresy. Jesus was tried for blasphemy. These are the same punishments, is the same answer, is death by stoning. So the question is, if they had enough evidence for heresy against Jesus, why was he not tried for it and punished by stoning under Jewish law? Well, for 3 reasons, it couldn't have happened. It just simply, the answer is no, they could not actually complete this trial. So the first reason is a person could not be brought to trial before a religious holiday. This is happening the day before Passover, so they could not bring him to trial that day. A person could not be brought to trial at night. He was arrested at night and brought to trial that night under Caiaphas. And the third one, a sentence could not be pronounced on the day of the accusations. So you couldn't accuse a person and sentence them at the same time. There had to be a time of deliberation. So Jesus' trial by the Sanhedrin was rushed, It was against Jewish law. The scribes that made up the Sanhedrin wouldn't have allowed it. So there was something very questionable about it. So why the rush? And I've realised I've skipped that piece. The Sanhedrin is made up of the elites of the Jewish. So it wasn't made up of, other than the high priest, it was made up of the elites. So we're talking scribes and scholars rather than the Pharisees. Pharisees were invited to it, but they didn't make up members. So if Pharisees, say like Joseph of Arimathea, who was pro-Jesus, was invited, that would have been spoken about. But as he was not mentioned, and no other Pharisees were mentioned, it was most likely just the elites who were there. So I nearly forgot that bit. So the high priest himself, this is the person that organised this. Now the reason the rush happened, I think, is mostly down to this gentleman. He was chosen by Pontius Pilate for his post. The governor of Judea chose he was going to be the high priest while they were in power. So the pair of them would work closely together to try and keep the stability of Judea at the same time. Pilate's primary goal was to keep everything calm and to just keep those taxes pouring into the empire. That's his job, that's his focus. So if he had someone he could work with, like Caiaphas, then he's going to keep him in power. I'm going to come to Pilate in a lot more detail later on. But at the time, during the time of Tiberius, governors only really had their position for 1 to 3 years. By the time of Jesus' trial, Pilate had been in power for 6 years. He'd already doubled the general time frame. So they must have been doing something right with the help of Caiaphas. Just one place. So Caiaphas is going to be coming for Passover. He's there to make sure everything runs smoothly, there's no riots or anything like that. So Passover's here, Caiaphas knows that Pilate's coming, and he knows that his trial will not stand Jewish law. So it's planned for this time, it is rushed for a reason. When Jesus, though, was first brought towards Pilate, they weren't asking for the ratification of their own judgment, they were changing it from being blasphemy to taking it over to being sedition. Sedition is where it's treason, where his statement of being king of the Jews would supplant the rule of the emperor. So this classifies as sedition. So this is where the difference is between Caiaphas' rule, that's trying to do blasphemy and religious. That doesn't work, and he knew it's not going to work, so he made sure Pilate was in the area so he could push Pilate into a trial of sedition. So a quick side note on the archaeology and what we have. We have found the tomb of Caiaphas. So this is his family burial tomb. Before we found the tomb, we didn't realise that it's most likely his first name was Joseph. He was just known as Caiaphas. So on the side of ossuaries, so these are boxes that are about this big, this deep, that are designed to hold the bones of a person. So once they're decomposed, the bones go into the ossuary, they're marked and they're kept there, waiting for the Jewish resurrection. We also know this is most likely the tomb of the high priest Caiaphas, because ossuaries, as Jewish burial practices, only took place from the very late BC to 70 AD, only during the height of Roman imperial rule. After 70 AD and the riots in the time, they stopped being used. So it's a very specific time frame, a very small lens in history where this one burial practice was used. So we know it's this Caiaphas' tomb. We just don't know which set of bones are his. So there's a 60-year-old man there. Most people guess it's going to be him because of the age he would needed to be running as high priest, but we're not certain. It's a most likely. And from that point, so when you think of the tomb of Jesus, most depictions show kind of a cave with a boulder in the front of it. They weren't started off as caves. They were literally hewn out of the rock by hand. By doing this, this shows the extravagance of having a tomb. It's why Joseph of Arimathea offered his. They take time to build, and Jesus' body could not have been put to rest over Passover because of Jewish law again. So having a tomb and being laid in the tomb was a big extravagance. And at that point, I'm going to pass to Charlotte.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so we just to recap, remember that Jesus, that's what we're going to celebrate tomorrow. He was with his apostles in the upper room where he did the Last Supper in Jerusalem. We're going to call that day the Good Thursday, how we call it as Catholic. Holy Thursday, sorry. American Catholics. Holy Thursday, that's right. That's a good translation from how we say in French and in Italian anyway. So, Jesus is doing the Lord's Supper, he's doing the institution of the Eucharist. Right, during the institution, Judas betrayed him. He goes to betray him. And so what happened is that Jesus then come out from Jerusalem with his disciples to go in the garden of Gethsemane, the olive trees. And in that garden, during the night, while he was praying to receive the strength to accept the chalice, no, not my will be done, Father, but your will. At this point, the guards, as Tim explained to us, these guards were not Roman soldiers, but guards of the temple, guard of Jewish people, soldiers, connected with these guys of the tribunal, the Sanhedrin. Some were high priests, other, elite people, important people, leaders, religious leader, and also kind of, lawyers, people of the law and whatever. And so they put Jesus in a trial during the night. During the night, no? And right after that, then they brought it to Pilate, no? As already Tim a little bit spoke about that, but we're going to come back to Pilate later. So what does that mean for us, all of this? We are looking more right now at the characters of this high priest or those priests, religious leaders, Pharisees, scribes, who put Jesus in trial during the night, which was kind of a fake trial because he was not respecting neither their own laws, right? So I just retain something that can help us to reflect on our own spiritual life. These guys were led by the temptation of jealousy or envy. That's the same thing, okay? Jealousy, envy. So why I say that? Because it's really written in the gospel, and actually Pilate figured it out. Pilate, the one who was judging Jesus, Roman God, he understood that this guy were led. It was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. You can read it. After they, so from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, after they, which means this religious leader, priests, Pharisees, scribes, had gathered in the praetorium where Pilate was, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas," so this criminal who was a zealot, he wanted to kind of a revolution, or Jesus, who is called the Messiah? For Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him up. So what does that mean for us? Well, it can be two situations. Some people have the temptation of jealousy against us. They can be jealous of us for any kind of reason. Maybe we are doing well something, we have a talent, or we have a responsibility in the parish, and someone else would like to have it. They're not happy because we have it, or whatever it is. And they can make some troubles in our life because of that. No? So that's what happened to Jesus. The trouble was until death, actually. They managed to bring him to death because of that envy and jealousy. Other situation, it can be ourselves. We are in the situation of being jealous or envious of someone. Maybe because that person is managing to do stuff that we don't know how to do it, and we would like to do it like them, but this bad reaction to a good thing that someone else is doing is something we need to work on that. We need to avoid it, because so the Catechism of the Catholic Church says envy or jealousy is a capital sin. It refers to the sadness at the sight of another's goods and the immoderate desire to acquire them for oneself, even unjustly. When it wishes grave harm to a neighbor, it is a mortal sin. Wow. Mortal sin. So, yeah, you can understand that, because that brought people even to kill Jesus, so, or to bring Jesus to death, to be condemned to death. So, what is the remedy against that? How we can fight against jealousy? First advice that I got from Saint Anthony of Padua is to avoid gossip. Because when you're jealous, you're gonna gossip, you're gonna speak badly of that person of which you are jealous or envious. No? Sometimes it can happen, right? And so we can also help others to avoid to gossip, but ourselves we need also to avoid to speak badly of others. Saint Anthony of Padua, you know the saint who has always baby Jesus in his arm, and the book, the Bible, and the other, more or less in the same arm, and Jesus on the top of the Bible. That's Saint Anthony of Padua. He was a Franciscan. He was living in the same time as Saint Francis of Assisi. They knew each other in the same community. So he said, detraction. Detraction is the same thing as gossip or slander, whatever it is. Detraction consists in transforming the good that someone else has done into an evil or diminishing it. Those who do this ask for the pardon of the brigand Barabbas, that is, of the devil. So Barabbas, in the story of Jesus, could for us represent the devil, no? Something that is not good. Barabbas was not the devil, but he did stuff that was not good, and they freed him instead of Jesus. So it's really clear that they choose evil things instead of good things. That was Christ's innocent. And for the crucifixion of Christ. So yes, they actually, the high priest took some word of Jesus and transformed it in some lies. No? Praise him. Jesus said, okay, he's a king, right? But he never said that he wanted to do a revolution against Caesar. And actually Pilate understood that, because even though Jesus told, when Pilate said, oh, so you are a king, Jesus said, well, you say so. And then he said, well, but Jesus then explained that my kingdom is not of this world. So Pilate said, well, this guy is not dangerous, he's not going to do a revolution against us or Caesar. So that's why he said, I don't find in him any guilt. Right. So the high priest, the priests, whatever they were, Pharisees and scribes, were trying to transform, transform the word of Jesus from good to bad. Right? That's what St. Anthony said here. And so also another thing that came in my mind, the good passages in the writing of St. Paul can help us to see our brothers and sisters more like gifts rather than negative competitors or usurpator. You're going to say that? Usurpator? Is it an English word?
Usurpers?
Usurpers. Usurpers. Someone who's going to steal you some grace. No? So what our founder often say, Friar Valentin, the founder of our community, he say that these religious leaders, Jewish people, they were probably thinking, not all of them, but some of them, were thinking, whoa, this Jesus with all those miracles and stuff, he's stealing us the clients. Because they were the guys, leading the people in the temple, at least the priests, or the Pharisees who were commenting the scriptures. So they were the guy more or less on the top of the religious hierarchy, and so people were coming to them, and they were performing also some kind of exorcism and maybe sometimes healing toward the population. So when Jesus arrived with a much bigger power, obviously he's God, they were kind of blown out. Well, who is this guy? How is it possible that he drained all this crowd after him? No? So we can understand the first reaction, instinctive reaction, human and limited reaction, but we have to fight against that. No? Jealousy, envy. And so that's what they didn't do. To see Jesus as a gift, actually, he was the Messiah. But us, when someone is gifted, with a talent, a charism, something, we need to see that as a gift for the whole body of Christ, because we are all in the church, we are all members of the same body, the body of Christ. And so, since God gave one gift to one of the members, he's giving it to us all. Because that person, with that gift, if that person uses it well, that's going to teach us something for us. Is that going to help us to become better? No? We can learn from that person and become better ourselves too. Right? Instead to be jealous and to want to suppress that person. Right? So what St. Paul says here is this. He's speaking of the body of Christ, we are a member of the body. The body is the church. Jesus is the head. And so he says, God has so composed the body of Christ, giving greater honor to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. So the true reaction when someone is honored by Christ with any kind of gift or responsibility in the church is to rejoice. Rejoice that that person, Christ through that person is going to enrich the whole body of Christ, so ourselves too. So the Pharisees should understand, or some of these Pharisees and scribes should understand, well, Jesus is going to enrich us. He's not going to steal our client. He's going to bring more people in the people of God. Actually, it's what happened. Instead of this tiny people of Israel, it became the whole planet. And now it's several billions of Catholic, of members of the body of Christ. So that's what we should do. In this way, we don't enter in that negative vision of worldly competition. But there is also a good and positive competition that we can see, for example, in the writing of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, who was a saint of the 20th century. He said, well, if I try to help my brother or to do a saint competition, I will try to surpass him. He's going to try to surpass me in that virtue or in these others. If we have a good spirit in doing that, without realizing we're going to become saints in this way. So a competition for sainthood. You see someone doing some good, we'll try to imitate Jesus through him and to do even better than him. In this way, we emulate ourselves to become more saints. And so there is also a good side of competition. And to finish that, I wanted also to say that Saint Therese of Lisieux, she said that in heaven there will be no indifferent look, but all of us, we're going to recognize the merits of each other's, which means we're going to be also grateful for whatever each other has done and joyful. what they have done. So in heaven, we're really gonna have a good appreciation of whatever each other has done. So there will be no more envy, no more jealousy, anything like that. But we need to start from now. If we want to go in heaven, we need to start from now to do that. And that's going to be even greater step by step. Amen. Tim.
The top head is a bust of Pontius Pilate. So I want a quick note about Roman busts. We're used to seeing them in this kind of clean marble state. Roman citizens wouldn't have seen them in that way. They would have been painted to show the proper hair colour, kind of skin tone and things like that. So when you think of all these nice Renaissance, where they're like looking back to the past and making these clean marble statues, they didn't know these used to be painted. There has been reconstructions of certain emperors repainted. Look at them online. Some of them are a little scary because the colours are very, very vibrant. It's kind of the skin tone is the pink you get from crayons. It's kind of that bright. So the Roman world wasn't this drab white marble. It was very colourful. But let's move on to Pontius Pilate himself. So early life. What do we know of Pilate before being the procurator, or what's colloquially called the governor of Judea? Nothing. Actually, we don't know anything about Pilate before then. There's no hard evidence of his life before then. But we can start inferring things because of what position he held and his name and things like that. So first of all, how did he become a governor? A governor is personally chosen by the emperor, which usually means they're mentioned in his biographies about who he chose at what time and which years. The Emperor Tiberius, so the bust lower down, he was a little different. He wasn't Caligula or Nero different. He got tired. In AD 26, he went to Capri to recuperate from the struggles and stress of running the empire. And he realized that sitting on this nice Mediterranean island with just able to do what he wanted was really good. So he stayed for the rest of his reign. He didn't actually continue being the emperor, he just didn't do the job. So he left that to somebody else. And this was the Praetorian prefect, Sejanus. So there isn't a bust of Sejanus. We have his coinage he issued with his face, or at least I couldn't find a bust. And I decided to use Patrick Stewart, who played Sejanus in I Claudius in 1976. So, quite similar, maybe. But he was in charge of the Praetorian Guard. These were the people who their sole duty was to keep the emperor alive. That was their job. You might think of a bodyguard as a group of kind of 30 people, but in the Roman period it was a 6,000 strong. So 6,000 men, a small army whose job it was to look after the emperor. So he had gone from looking after this small, like 6,000 men, to now running the empire. So we have a military man in charge in AD 27 when Pilate came in to become a governor. And the next thing, his name, in Greek is Pilatus. Now with Roman names, they have meanings. You first, when you were born, you're given what's called your praenomen. So this is your name that's your family name. And usually, your birth name has something very similar to everyone else in your family. My favourite evidence of this is the Constantinians. You have Constantine I, Constantine II, Constantine III, Constantius, Constans, and because there was a girl, Constantina, just to be a little bit different. And then you have your second name, though, to kind of differentiate you, and that's called your cognomen. So that's your second name. And this is given to you kind of because of what you do or who you are or something like that. It's kind of what you're like rather than that. So what about Pilatus? Well, this can be broken down into, try not to turn, spear thrower. This would be most likely given towards that he had military conflict in the past. Because the Roman army worked, before you had your shield walls, your tostudas, and stabbing with swords and pushing. When the enemy charged, they first threw their spear, and this was called a pilum. It's a light spear that they could throw, if you were good at it, somewhere between 100 and 130 feet before the enemy could get to you. And then you'd have a heavy spear that they could choose to throw if there was too many charging at them, or start with a spear. So if he was good at throwing a spear, he could be given the name spear thrower through military combat, and they've seen that this is good. So that's his name. So we have a military name, and we've got a military man who's in charge of the empire. Having a military past is also given further credence by Emperor Augustus. He wrote an item called the Cursus Honorum. So this is the road to honour. And this sets down the rules over how to become a governor and other positions in government. So a person had to have military service. This is due to the fact that he had military troops under them to actually keep control. Now, this wasn't a fighting legion going to expand the empire and fighting on the borders. They were literally more like a police force, but it was still Roman troops under them, so they needed military service beforehand. So with his name, what the Cursus Honorum states, we can also point that it states they had to at least be of what's called equestrian rank. So this is the first part of being at elitehood. You weren't a normal citizen, you were a member of the elite. So if you're a member of the elite, you can also have connections politically, or from being in the military, you have military connections because you're higher up already because you're part of the elite. So this, with the name spear thrower and all this put together, is most likely that Sejanus knew him under a military reason and thought he would make a good governor of this small province, Judea. He can go deal with that one. But so far this has all been kind of supposition over how he became governor. But we do have evidence of his actions as governor from two historians, Jewish historians, Flavius Joseph and Philo. From the historical text, we have multiple instances of his governorship. He was disrespectful to the Jews and wasn't tolerant to their ways. One of the first instances was when... Sorry, get ahead of myself. He didn't cover the standards. So, in Judea, you couldn't have iconography against Jewish law. So having the face of someone on an item is against the law. Roman standards, depending on what campaign you're in, depending on what you completed, what honours you had, would have the emperor's face on it, because that's your legion, that's who created you. But Pilate saw this honour and he didn't want to hide it from his men or anything like that, so he wouldn't cover them. So that was an affront to the Jewish people. He also, later on, when he was staying at Herod's palace, I'll come to which palace later, and he put big banners up with Caesar's face on it and golden shields and kind of decorated like in the honour of Caesar. This almost causes a riot because there's so much showing off that's against Jewish law. But Pilate decided to, because his job is to keep the place calm, keep it calm, keep the taxes coming in, he quickly takes them down again. And that's where we go from there. So, I've gone ahead of myself. And then Josephus states about there was a letter from Herod Antipas to Emperor Caligula. So Caligula follows Tiberius. And in regards of Pontius Pilate, this was sent at the end of his governorship when he was removed. He called him a man of inflexible disposition, ruthless and obstinate. These are rather strong words to describe someone who's meant to be friendly to. Because after the trial of Jesus, it states in the Bible that these two reconcile afterwards. Well, this is 4 years after the trial of Jesus, so they could have fallen out again, but it's still harsh words to describe someone to the new emperor, like, this is what he's really like. But as I said earlier, I'm an archaeologist, so I deal in the things that are real, something you can go and touch. And this is the Pilate stone. You can just make out some of the inscription of what's left of it. So you have like Tiberium, Pilatus, Ectus Oidea, and like DE. So the translation reads to be, to the divine Augustus Tiberius, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, has dedicated something. We're not sure what building this was to dedicate to. Dedication stones are usually on somewhere you can see them. So it's like above a doorway. They're large. They're around this tall. So the words are a good 3 inches big, so you can see the words as you walk through. Now we're not sure what it was there to dedicate, but there is mention in Josephus about an aqueduct that Pilate had built using temple funds. Josephus wrote about this being a great affront to the Jews, that he was taking the money of the Jews, their religious money, and building this Roman aqueduct. And there's two ways Pilate could have got that money. The first one would have been he'd have stomped in there with troops and literally just taken it. The second one, which is more likely, is that Caiaphas gave it to him. If he'd gone in there with troops, Josephus would have happily written down, and he just desecrated it with soldiers. That wasn't there. So with the friendship between Pilate and Caiaphas, it's most likely that Pilate requested the funds to build an aqueduct for the Jewish people, and the funds were released. As the high priest, he could do that. So it shows more evidence of this relationship between the two. So moving on from that money, we then move on to the money of Judea. I stated earlier that you can't have faces on things in Jewish. It was against the rules. So on the left, the silver coin is a denarii of Tiberius. Jokingly enough, if you haven't got the words, the ears give it away, because his ears are very prominent. And then on the, so that's the obverse, on the reverse, you have what looks like Isis. So definite pagan imagery. So two things completely against the Jews. The coins underneath Pilate's face are what he issued. So you can kind of, in the middle one, make out Tib, just about where it had Tiberius. The top one had Julia down it, which was Tiberius's wife. But on the reverse, you have just a sheaf of corn, of wheat. Nothing that is too offensive. When Josephus wrote about the coinage of Pilate, he wrote that he put pagan symbols on there to be an affront to the Jews. That doesn't seem to match with what we physically have. So we can then start thinking, okay, how much of what Josephus said is actually true? Because we're going through the lens of a later person, talking about the past and looking at what he has. Later on, they stopped doing this in Judea after the riots. They just issued Roman coinage. So he's looking at what he has in his hand, and he's looking at these Roman coins that are against Jewish law, and probably thinking, well, Pilate probably did the same thing. He's Roman. But now, so later on, they had just standard Roman coinage. So it's a question, it brings into question what Josephus was saying. How much of his arguments against Pilate were actually true or exaggerated in the histories. Went backwards. So now on to Pilate, a bit more as a person. How good of governor was he? His length of term. I've already mentioned that the average was 1 to 3 years under Tiberius. He managed to keep his post for 10 years in total. Was this a person that was using the iron boots and keeping people aligned with military, or was he working hard to keep in the kind of the middle line, the middle way? I've got to stop looking. What ended his reign as governor was that there was a group of Jews who were searching for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, as a Roman, he wouldn't understand its religious importance. He would have seen it, even if it doesn't do the things it says it does in the Bible, it would have been, Torah at the time, it would still been a rallying point for the Jews, something that they could get behind to fight the Romans with. So he decided to send troops to break up this excavation. Well, the Jews didn't want to stop their excavation, and the Romans got told they had to stop it, so things got bloody, and the soldiers did what soldiers do. And then a riot happened. And then soldiers do what soldiers do some more, until the riot stops. And this got him basically removed from place from the governor of Syria, took over and said, look, no, you have your position, you've got to go to emperor and deal with this. You caused a riot, that's against the rules. So other than this one instance, it seems like he was very good at walking a middle line, most likely with the help of Caiaphas. So this seems to go quite well. So mostly walked the middle ground. So what happened to Pilate? Well, first of all, when he got removed from his position, he was sent back to go and see the emperor. So he's on his way to Emperor Tiberius, and by his luck, Emperor Tiberius died. So he couldn't be passed judgment on because the emperor was dead. But the new emperor came in, Emperor Gaius, or as most people know him as Caligula. So instead of visiting this new emperor with a slight reputation, he most likely did what most Roman elites did: self-imposed exile. This is where they decide that they're going to a trial, they know they're going to lose it, so they take their wealth, their family, and they move to the fringes of the empire, or just past the empire, so that no soldiers could really come and get them, and they can carry on leaving kind of Roman life and still have a nice, basically not get executed at the end. Now, there's various legends about Pilate that carry on from the Middle Ages. The Protestant Ethiopian Church even goes so far as thinking of him as a saint. These legends developed through the Middle Ages. Various documents were created and concepts changed between Pilate being the reluctant persecutor or prosecutor of Jesus to becoming more of a full-blown convert, and then becoming a martyr, and then even becoming a saint. One of these letters was found in Liverpool in England in 1963. Apparently this letter was from Pilate to Emperor Claudius, stating that I'm the governor, I need help with these Jews and speaking of Christianity. The only problem is that Claudius was emperor in AD 41, so Pilate wouldn't have written that letter. He wasn't governor anymore. So it shows that this was a medieval forgery or a fake to promote Pilate as moving forwards in Christian beliefs. So with an understanding of Pilate, Jesus was brought before him, and the case was presented as him claiming to be king of the Jews. So such a usurpation of the rightful place in Pilate's eyes of the emperor. Therefore he needed to be tried under sedition and possibly inciting rebellion. Treason and sedition are punishable by crucifixion, and I'll come to crucifixion later. That is a punishment, not an execution, slightly different. But before Pilate passed judgment, he went, "You're from Galilee, Herod," and kind of passed it on to Herod instead. So he didn't want to sit over this, and he passed it to Herod, who I will talk about in a moment after that.
So what the character of Pilate, what God is wanting to teach us through the character of Pilate? Huh? Probably many things, but what I focused on for today is reflecting on the reality of the conscience. So the conscience, we're going to see what it is according to also the Catechism of the Catholic Church. But let's see first what the situation of Pilate. So Pilate, well, let's read that passage in which Pilate received an exhortation from his wife. All right, in the Gospel of Matthew, we see that while Pilate, was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him," about Jesus. Huh? And so the wife of Pontius Pilate, she was a pagan like her husband, right? She didn't know much about Jewish laws. She didn't really believe in that only God, we know. But she believed in dreams. Actually, Tim confirmed to me and underlined the fact that for Roman people, and many Romans who were pagans at this point, dreams was a way to hear messages from gods, from their different gods, right? And so this is something that is common point with what we have in the Bible, because we see in the Bible, you can see from the patriarch to the kings and prophets, and until to even the apostle. Peter has some dreams and revelation through vision and dreams, but also Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, received some important indication about how to save the check Jesus through dreams and what name to give him and so on. So that's the divine. He's speaking through dreams is something else that we believe as Catholic. Difference is that the pagans were thinking there were different gods, but for us it's one God who is speaking there. And so the wife of Pontius Pilate could represent a kind of a voice to the conscience of Pilate, which is seated on the seat of judgment, the judgment seat. The judgment seat, for us, it could mean that sometimes we have to judge, to discern in our life. We don't want to judge people, because Jesus said, do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, you will not be condemned. Right? The measure you're going to judge people, you're going to be judged. So we don't want to judge people, obviously. But Jesus in another gospel, as the founder of our community helped me to notice, the Gospel of John is saying, do not judge according to the appearances, but judge. Imperative verb. Judge with right judgment. So what does that mean? Do we need to judge or not judge? And here we have the Catechism of the Catholic Church, who explains that we need to judge the action, not the person. Alright? So the action, we need to judge the action because we need to understand if we have to do that action or to not do it. If it's a bad action, to avoid it. And if it's a good action, we need to do it, exhort others to do it. So here there is a judgment exercised, that happened in our mind, but not only in our mind, in what the church calls conscience, what we call conscience. So what is a conscience? And I think Pilate is speaking, God, through Pilate, is speaking about that problem of conscience. To listen to one's own conscience. So the Catholic Church says, conscience is man's most secret core and his sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depth. So here we could see that the wife of Pontius Pilate was kind of representing that voice of God who was speaking to Pilate. Look, don't mess with Jesus, because this guy is more than you can imagine. No, he's even better than you can imagine. He is innocent, right? Conscience is a judgment of reason by which the human person recognizes the moral quality of a concrete act. So Pilate, by himself, he used this reason. He said to the Jew, to this religious leader, look, I don't see any reasonable cause to put this guy to death, to crucifixion. There is no reason, no case against that man. We're going to see that later. I took the passage from the Gospel. I don't find no case against that man. Because Pilate, he was judging according to Roman law, and so he was trying to find a concrete chief of accusation, so a reason to accuse Jesus, because there was no way he could find something reasonable. Right? So he was using his reason. Conscience can remain in ignorance or make erroneous judgments. Such ignorance and errors are not always free of guilt. So, but at the end, as we're going to see, Pilate is under pressure. The Jewish leaders, the religious leaders are saying, well, if you don't bring Jesus to crucifixion, you're not a friend of Caesar. We're going to bring you to have some problem with Caesar, with your boss, no, with the emperor. And so Pilate understood that he's going to have some troubles. He will not do what these people wanted he does. And so he accepted to send Jesus to be crucified at the end, right? And so this is a mistake, right? To send God himself, the Son of God, to be crucified. That's right, that he was ignorant. He didn't know all the prophecies of the prophets about Jesus, about the Messiah, so he didn't have these tools to judge well about, who was really this guy he had in front of him. But he could have judged according to his own reason and say, okay, I don't find any good in this man, even if you want to kill me or you want to make me problem. I don't put him under accusation if I don't have a serious reason for which I should send him to crucifixion. He could have done that too. That's why Jesus tells him, when Pilate says, well, you know that I have the power to kill you, huh? So you should behave. That's what Pilate say to Jesus more or less. And Jesus said, well, you would not have no power over me if it was not given to you from on high. That means from the Father. And then he said, that's why also those who delivered me to you have a greater sin than yours. So Jesus is saying, okay, but I know you're not Jewish, so you don't understand many things. Don't worry, you don't have a super big sins like these guys who are pushing you to kill me, but you still have a sin. That's what Jesus is saying. Right? So Pilate could have done better, but not. He was also excused in many ways. He didn't have many tools that we have to judge better how to deal with the things of Jesus. The Word of God is a light for our path. We must assimilate it in faith and prayer and put it into practice. This is how moral conscience is formed. Right? So if we really want to have a conscience able to discern well what is good from what is bad, we need the Word of God. No? We need to be educated through the Word of God and also the doctrine of the Catholic Church, who has the keys to interpret well the Word of God. Jesus gave the keys to Peter, who was the first Pope of the Church, right? And so he said, what you will bind will be bound on what you will bind on earth will be bound in heaven, what you will lose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So the interpretation of the scriptures. We need also to listen to the church so that we can have a very accurate conscience, discernment. So we read a little bit what I already said, but to see the evolution, how Pilate moved step by step from not willing to accuse Jesus to then be kind of constricted, almost constricted, to not have enough strength to resist to the pressure, external pressure. So Pilate went out in the Gospel of John. Pilate went out to the Jews again and told them, I find no case against him, against Jesus. From then on, Pilate tried to release Jesus. But the Jews cried out, if you release this man, you are no friend of the emperor. Everyone who claims to be a king sets himself against the emperor. They cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate asked them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, we have no king but the emperor. Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So you see, at the beginning he was trying to save the situation, to not bring that man to death, because he understood he was innocent. He didn't have case against Jesus. But at the end, because they were doing pressure on him, he accepted what they wanted. And so what happened is that Pilate kind of lack of the virtue of fortitude, that obviously without Christ is much more difficult to have. But we're going to look at, since we are always Jesus, we're going to look what does that mean for us, the virtue of fortitude. So let's see what the Catholic Church says. Fortitude is a moral virtue that ensures firmness in difficulties and constancy in the pursuit of the good. It strengthens the resolve to resist temptations and to overcome obstacles in the moral life. The virtue of fortitude enables one to conquer fear, even fear of death, and to face trials and persecution. It disposes one even to renounce and sacrifice his life in defense of a just cause. So that's right here. Huh? In defense of the just cause of Jesus, someone could even sacrifice his own life, like the martyrs did, because already also they had the faith in the resurrection. The fact that one day is possible to, even if someone kills us, God's going to resurrect our bodies and our soul on the last day. The Lord is my strength and my song. In the word you have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the word. Say Jesus, no? Say Jesus. So Jesus, through his resurrection, is going to give us much more reason to be strong in this tribulation. If we have, for example, I mean, it's not always that we're going to be threatened of death, but sometimes someone can maybe be threatened to lose his job, no? Because the employer wants him to do something that is not moral, that is not according to the Catholic Church. So at this point, that person needs to be strong. Well, whatever you do, I need to keep my the just behaviors that Jesus asked me to do, even if I lose my job. Or if the children in a family are doing a lot of mischievous things, the parents need to be strong also to have a certain firmness, to help the children to understand, no, that's not the way you need to go. I'm not going to cede or concede you this. And so if the children see the parents with that firmness, they're going to be taught by that example. Okay, so if my dad or my mom are insisting on that, that means it's probably important. So the conscience of the children will speak also through the example of the parents. No? Oh, any other things that we could see even with a friend. A friend is just asking us to do something that is not right, or to lie, or to steal something, or whatever. But if we are strong in maintaining, not sinning, not listening to them, that's also a good witness for them. So fortitude is not just to resist in the case we are threatened of death, but also in many other situations of our life. And I pass the word to Tim. Now we're going to have just a small, how do you say, a small reflection about Herod, with much less information, and then we're going to go toward the conclusion.
First name? There we go. Right, push the button. Sorry, no picture of Herod. There wasn't historically context image of him. Even Sejanus at least had a coin. I don't have one for Herod. So, Herod Antipas. First of all, let's talk about the location of where Herod was at the trial. The simple one is he was in the palace of Herod the Great. From what I've read in the research, there is in Jerusalem what's referred to as the palace of Herod the Great, and they have the palace of Herod Antipas. But from my readings, it seems more likely that he was still in the palace of Herod the Great at the time. So who was there? Pontius Pilate did not live in Jerusalem. He lived in Kisium for the majority of his time, and only at major religious holidays did he come to Jerusalem. And that's when he'd stay at the palace of Herod the Great. This was being used as the praetorium. The praetorium is the person who's in charge of the military of the area. So it's the person who's underneath Pilate would be the one who would be living there permanently in Jerusalem. So with Herod Antipas, he's come over from Galilee as well during Passover for this religious festival. Is it because he knew that Pilate was going to be there as well and what was going on with Jesus? Not sure, because it doesn't say if he regularly travelled to Jerusalem for religious events. As much as he was Jewish, as Father States told me yesterday, he was Jewish by birth, but he wasn't really a very good Jew. He didn't, and as we find out, he did not stick to Jewish law very well. So the actual palace of Herod the Great has been found, or at least parts of it have. It's under the Tower of David Museum. A very prolific archaeologist by the name of Amit Riem discovered it in 2015 through his excavations. Now, some of you can have a smile of relief because I couldn't read his excavation report because I don't read Hebrew, so you don't have to sit through that. So, who was Herod? He's referred kind of in a colloquial term as a client king. He was a member of a tetrarch. He was installed in place by Emperor Augustus after the death of his father, Herod the Great, with his two brothers. So, Herod Antipas looked after Galilee. He then had Herod Archelaus and Herod Philip, who had other sections of the province to look after. That's a quick overview. So, under the rules of Herod the Great, it was split so the brothers didn't fight amongst themselves over who's going to be in charge. They're all partly in charge. They're all under Rome. So the client king had kind of the same position as the governor. He was in charge of that area to keep the area nice and calm and make sure that taxes were still going to the empire because the empire loved their taxes, and that the imperial cult was honoured. So the cult of Caesar himself had its tributes completed. As long as the local ruler did that, they got to stay in charge. It made things easier for Rome. So, which Herod did what in the Bible? Mostly, when it comes to Jesus, it's Herod Antipas. If you hear Herod, it's Antipas who did it. He was the ruler of Galilee. And he is the one who decapitated John the Baptist. So why did he have him decapitated? Antipas divorced his first wife and then decided to marry Herodias. See the name thing again, very similar. She was the wife of his half-brother. This was criticised by both the Jewish people in general and also under Jewish law. This was not a legal marriage. Under Leviticus chapter 20, verse 21, if a man takes his brother's wife, it is impurity. So you cannot marry your brother's wife. This is also the way that Henry VIII got out of his first marriage, because it was his brother's wife, and he said, look, I did the wrong thing, so he got his divorce, his annulment from the Pope. That was the first wife. That's a whole other thing about the rest of them. So, Herodias did not like John the Baptist's attitude towards her marriage. He saw it as null void against Jewish law. So she first of all asked for his head, straight away for him to be removed. But Herod took a step back and just had him imprisoned. Later on, the daughter of Herodes completed a dance for him in the middle of a banquet in front of all his honoured guests, and he was so enraptured by this dance that he said, whatever you ask for, I will give you. So the daughter asked for the head of John the Baptist. So he's spoken an oath in front of various honoured guests, so he can't back down. This is something he has to do. So John the Baptist is then decapitated. This was not the only way he disrespected Jews. When he was in power, he had a whole new city built, and it was called Tiberias, which was constructed on top of a Jewish cemetery. So it desecrated this Jewish area. No Jews should live in that area because the cemetery has been desecrated. Not only that, his own palaces were decorated with iconography that the Jewish found offensive. So when he brought Jewish people to come and speak to him, they were offended as well. He just didn't seem to care very much about the laws of his own people. So where's that leaving with his attitude towards Jesus? Herod, when he first heard of Jesus walking the paths in Galilee and performing miracles, actually thought it was John the Baptist back from the dead. He was concerned, he'd been risen. So he sent people to try and find him. He wanted to inspect him. He wanted to see, is this the same person that I've just decapitated, or is there something else going on? So this is why Jesus was wandering around being chased by Herod's... Did I get that right? Yeah, Herod's men. So when it comes to when he had Jesus pass through, it was like he now gets to inspect Jesus and to see him. He sees he's not John the Baptist, he sees he's a Messiah, and he dresses him in the way. But he also realizes it's not his place to pass Jewish judgment on him. he's not in Galilee. This is not his area that he can look after. So he gets to inspect Jesus and then go, not my problem, and hands it back to Pilate. Now, on a quick note, when it comes to dates, Antipas was deposed in 37 AD. So when his other brother, Agrippa, came to power, he was given the title of king by Emperor Caligula and various lands, and lands that outstripped Antipas's lands. So he decided, Herod Antipas, to go to Caligula and say, look, you should call me king and give me more land as well to match my brother. Caligula did what Caligula does best and said no, removed Antipas from his position of power and then gave it all to his brother instead. You don't make demands of Caligula. So if you listen to the dates, so we have AD 37 is when Herod's deposed. You have AD 37 when Pilate's deposed as well, and when Pilate's deposed, Caiaphas loses his position as well. So within a year of themselves, 36, 37, all three people of the trial have all lost their positions at the same time. So now back to Father.
All right. So what God is wanting to teach us through the example, the character of Herod Antipas. So there is a saying that we had put on a flyer at the beginning of our community. Friar Valentin, the founder of our community, he had written a little flyer, like really just 2 little pages, and it was written in Italian. I want to give you the English translation more or less. Herod started with watching and finished with killing. Now, if we reflect about that, it happened to him actually several times, spiritually speaking. So what do I mean? The first time, he started to watch probably the wife of his brother. He said, oh, that's a pretty woman, I'm gonna have her as my wife. So he started by watching, he finished by doing a mortal sin, which is adultery. Not to take the wife of someone else, it doesn't work. It's not right. And so this is a first killing, it's a mortal sin, adultery. But then, when he was with this woman, her daughter did a dance, and he started with watching, and again, he finished by killing, because this daughter of his concubine was asked by her mother the head of John the Baptist. And actually Herod didn't really want to kill John the Baptist because he liked him, he liked to listen to him, even if he had him in jail because of that woman had asked that. So he didn't really want to kill him, but he did a promise to the daughter, no, I will give you anything that you ask me, even half of my kingdom. You remember that story, no? When the Gospel of Mark is recounted, when Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it. And he solemnly swore to her, whatever you ask me, I will give you, even half of my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what should I ask for? She replied, the head of John the Baptizer. So Herod started washing, and he finished killing John the Baptist. So what this means for us, no? What do we want to understand with that, and why we have this little flyer in our community? It's just to understand that sometimes even things that can seem to us small, we could call that sometimes venial sins. If we don't pay attention too much, to what could be a venial sin, just watching and being distracted by some a nice person. If we're gonna step by step go after that, it can lead even to mortal sin. It's what, for example, thoughts. Now, someone look at a pretty woman, or a woman look at pretty man, and she look and she start to think. No? So if you just have a thought, all right, you understand, oh, that's not good, it's gonna not make something good in my head, so you just cast it away. You have no sin, all right, because you cast it away in time. But if you nourish it and keep it in your mind, it becomes a sin. In our community, we say it's like a bird. If the bird come on your head and you cast it away, that's all right, didn't do nothing. But if you leave the bird on your head and you help him to do his nest, give him some branches, and then at the end he finished to have an egg on your head, and that's what the sin here is, the egg. No, when the birds made the egg, no, in a certain way, no, it's the image to understand it. So about that, I have a passage of Saint Francis de Sales, which Cathedral of whom Thibodeau has a name, and he was a bishop in France in 1600. And so he said, a method has been found for changing bitter almonds trees into sweet. They have only to be pierced at the foot to let the sap flow out. So he's speaking about biology stuff. No, the tree, there are trees that are kind of bitter, so they produce bitter almonds. So to take away that bitterness, they just pierce the foot of the tree, and that the sap can go out, and that makes almonds sweeter. That's the way they were doing in his time. And why do we? So now he's gonna compare that to spiritual life, to our life. So why do we not make our unhealthy inclination flow out like this bitterness, in order that we may become better? He said, there is no natural temperament so good that it may not be made evil by bad habits. There is no natural temperament so wicked which cannot be controlled and overcome, first of all by the grace of God, and then by effort and constant care. Hence, I shall now give you certain instructions and recommend some exercises by means of which you can purify yourself from dangerous attachment to things, from natural imperfection, and from every attachment to venial sins. In this way, you will make your conscience more and more secure against all mortal sin. So if we are vigilant also on what can be a venial sin, and say, well, I don't want that in my life, step by step we'll be secure, we'll be more watchful also of the danger of mortal sin. So that's more or less, we don't want either to start with little things, because we know little things can become bigger. More or less is what the idea that I was taking from Herod, bad example, and from St. Francis' teaching, which is in the introduction to the devout life. So he's giving a lot of advices to be more vigilant in our spiritual life and avoid venial sins, and so also avoid mortal sins. And so we are back to Pilate and the judgments, because when Jesus was judged by Pilate, then Pilate sent him to Herod. So Herod, he didn't want to do anything, so he sent it back to Pilate. So we are then with Jesus back to Pilate right now, and his judgment, last judgment. And then we arrive to conclusion.
Okay, so Father's already spoken about Pilate and the judgment in a religious setting. So this is more secular. This is stripping the religion away and just speaking about historical version. So with all the background you have on the Sanhedrin, Caiaphas, Herod, Pilate himself, the first question is why now? When you read through, Herod had been trying to arrest Jesus, the Pharisees have been antagonists all the way through, and Jesus then arrives at Jerusalem. He's been there for a week, teaching and praying and things, but it's only when it comes to now, comes to Passover, they actually come to arrest him. Caiaphas and Herod both knew that Pilate would be in the city over Passover. It's a time when there can be unrest and riots, and his job is to keep it calm, so he needs to be there to oversee. So Caiaphas has him arrested. He then does a trial. Really, it was more like an ordeal, where he's just asking questions until he got something he could use. So he got his sentence he could use, and then that was it. It was over. He's then moving him towards Pilate. Jesus was being tried for sedition. This was for the claim of being king of the Jews. And that would supplant the emperor and rule over Judea. So, sedition and treason. A trial in a Roman period can be very swift. The only person who actually had jurisdiction in legal matters above a governor of a region was the emperor himself. So they were taking this to the highest possible method they can, straight away. As an accuser can bring a person before the person for the judicial body, they can bring the accusation, and this time of sedition. It was up to the judicial body, whoever that may be, in this case Pilate, to find out if that accusation is true. They would do this through questioning whoever was present, finding if there's anyone else to question, or any evidence that may be brought towards them. Other than what is said, no evidence was brought to Pilate. It was just their word, and that was all. His hesitance can be seen in the reaction to the fact that there was so little evidence. So it's legally he didn't want to move forward. It wasn't correct. With the continued questions, and then he goes to release a murderer and says, can this go in place of Jesus? As part of the custom, and that is refused. It then leaves that there's very little option for what Pilate can do. He's been requested to crucify Jesus by the high priest. This is a person he's worked with for 6 years at the time, and they've kept things stable. And with him trying to state the rule of law, of Roman law, he's being told, look, if you don't do this, then there will be a riot. Everything's going to go wrong. We'll let the emperor know that it's all your fault that you did this. So he's kind of stuck. On one hand, he's got to keep to his Roman duties. And he's trying to do that in the rule of law. But he's also got his higher duty, which is keeping the province stable. So he has this person he's meant to keep it stable with, telling him, if you crucify this person, you'll keep your province stable. So with no real place to go, he passes the judgment of crucifixion. So we're going to move on to the crowd. Now, in a lot of depictions, you see this massive crowd being the people of Jerusalem that have all come to see this trial. It's so important. These are the people right at the beginning. And this crowd is shouting to crucify him, yet at the beginning of the week, the same crowd has turned around and welcomed him as Messiah and been joyous about his arrival. This trial is happening in Herod the Great's palace. Now, it is a big palace. This is just a small section of it you can see at the bottom during the excavation. It's a huge building, but it's not going to hold most of the city of Jerusalem, as you see in movie depictions. The people that had fitted in the courtyard would have been the Sanhedrin, whoever they brought with them, and whichever Roman soldiers and Roman imperials who were in the praetorium at the time. So this crowd is a very biased crowd that is being asked, what shall I do? So you've got the Sanhedrin there saying, crucify him, and they're just going to join in. To the Roman soldiers, it makes no difference. They'll just shout anything, it's fine. So in the end, the punishment is given. Now, Pilate does offer scourging, which is interesting. He offers the scourging, which he shows he had a knowledge of Jewish law. So he tries to kind of placate them. He's like, okay, we'll scourge him, that's part of your laws. And they're like, no, that's not enough. We know it's not enough, it's not enough. He has to be crucified. I mentioned earlier that crucifixion is a punishment. Death just happens to be the end result. I'm now going to talk about crucifixion in a very literal sense. it gets a bit grim. I will warn you now. So crucifixion was a usual punishment. This was what happened if you had treason against Rome, you caused sedition. This was you found is crucifixion. That's simple. So first of all, in all crucifixions, you had scourging, you were flogged. While you were flogged in a public area, deliberately so people can see it happening to you, you're openly mocked and debased in whatever way they felt like while they were flogging you beforehand. They then made you carry your own instrument of death, made you carry your cross. Now, most likely, the cross was not, as you see in most depictions, a full cross. The early Roman Empire, if anything, it was efficient. In Judea, there was not a lot of wood. So most likely, the upright was a reusable piece that was there waiting for them, and it was the crossbar that Jesus would have carried. Now, this is still a very large piece of timber that you've got to carry that's able to hold your arms at expanse. So after you've been scourged and flogged and mocked, this is still a heavy piece for you to start walking along and carrying. Then the punishment continues. Your crime is written above you and nailed onto the cross with you to show what you've done to incur this wrath from Rome. And then we go on to the actual nailing itself. The nails would have gone through the wrist joint, below the wrist here, between your radius and ulna. This way the nails can hold your body's weight. In most depictions you see the nail through the hand. This would not have held. The meat and flesh would have just ripped off under your body weight. So that joint between the radius and ulna, that's where the nail goes in. As for the feet, they've actually have sheer chance a single, so I'm going to get his name because he needs to be honoured. On the ossuary of a man named Johanna, the nail is still in place in his ankle joint. So you can see in the image, so you've got the reconstruction on the left and then the actual nail and ankle joint on the right. The nail goes through a piece of wood that then goes through your ankle, goes through and then into the cross. So your foot is inside a box in the cross. His one is still there because the nail bent as it hit the wood. It found a hard knot and it bent round and hooked. So the nail, when they're taking him down from the cross, could not be removed. It was stuck. We've not finished the punishment yet. The next bit is just breathing. Biomechanically, you are hanging by the weight of your arms. It puts strain on all the muscles going around through to your chest. So trying to breathe while hanging and all your weight is on these muscles is very difficult. You have to push yourself with your legs to help yourself to breathe. So depending on how they nailed you to that cross depends on how long you have to live. If you're at full extension, so all your weight is on your arms and your legs are at full extension, you cannot push to relieve your chest. There's, from the angle of the nail there, they think that it was more like higher up. So more of a squatting position, so the person could basically push for longer and he would have lasted longer on the cross. So while he was there trying to breathe, people can see his crime and still go up and mock them some more. The whole thing is a public display of power. It's to show the power of Rome and what happens when you try to openly oppose it. They can take you, they arrest you, they put you on trial, they beat you, humiliate you, and then kill you, and they make it all a public display. And that's what crucifixion was.
So don't worry, we end with the resurrection anyway. It doesn't finish just with the cross, but yes, that's important to understand also how much Jesus has gone through the sufferings. Yeah, we see also a map here. So yesterday we didn't really go through the map, but it can help you maybe to to have a better understanding of what was going on. If you see here, let's see. Wow.
All right. This is a place where was the upper room where Jesus did the Last Supper. Okay, so it was in the south west of Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem. Okay, Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. Jesus and his apostle were like down there, and you can go see it today. I went there some years ago. You can still see the upper room where Jesus first in another room he washed the feet and then celebrate the Eucharist. When after that they went somewhere, I don't know by what door or whatever, but they went in a mount, the Garden of Olive Trees. So the Mount of Olives is right there. So here they speak about the Garden of Gethsemane, right here. So all this is called the Mount of Olives. So there are still today a lot of olive trees on that side of Jerusalem, so the east side. No? And here, the Garden of Gethsemane. So they did a little bit of walk to go there, cross that river. There was a river Kedron, which is right there, close to the mural, the walls of Jerusalem. And Jesus then obviously was arrested, and so he was brought to that place where he was first judged by the Jewish leaders. So more or less, I don't know exactly where it is. Maybe Tim.
By the upper room.
So very close to the upper room. So the house, Caiaphas' house. Yeah. So he passed also by Caiaphas' house, and maybe somewhere else also during this time, before to arrive to the Praetorium where Pilate was, which is somewhere here, close to the palace of Herod.
Attached to the wall.
Attached to the wall, right there. Right there. So the big palace of Herod is all this, and attached to that palace there was this Praetorium, where the Roman soldiers were staying. So Jesus was judged here, and after that, obviously we know that. So he went to the palace of Herod to be also kind of looked by Herod, but Herod didn't do any judgment, and then went back to Pilate, and then was sent to be crucified somewhere in that area. All right, we don't know exactly the place here. They put it here. Golgotha is not. I think there are discussions among their historians, archaeologists, but we understand more or less in this area. Okay, so you see, you have a vision more or less of the map of what Jesus did during this time. So from here to there, from there to here, to there, to here, and then here.
So we arrive to the resurrection. Oops. Right. Yes. Okay. So the faith in the resurrection is a key to face our life's challenges, our life struggles. So I have said that when we have temptation of jealousy, it's good to think about heaven, where everybody is going to recognize the merits of each of us. So we're gonna have this gratefulness for each other. So there will be no more this kind of jealousy. So that's good. Also, if someone is jealous of us here, or if we have the temptation to think about heaven, how great it will be that really God will give true credit to all of us, and all of us will acknowledge that. No? If we are under pressure of external pressure, people want us to do bad things. It can be our parents, it can be our children, it can be some family members, our employer, or whoever they are. If we really believe in the resurrection, that God's going to resurrect our body and our soul, that with no more death, we'll be always together in this beautiful place. We can even face death, no? In order just to keep doing the will of God and not losing Jesus' friendship. Right? And if we we have the temptation of Herod to look after pleasure in this world and lose track of what really is important and fall in mortal sin and things like that. We know that the saints help us to know, like St. Thomas Aquinas, that in heaven there will be the perfect satisfaction of all human desires. God will fulfill our desire and go even beyond whatever we can imagine, think. So you can think to the most beautiful things you like the much the most. This is just a shadow in comparison to what God's gonna give you in heaven. So imagine what fun we're gonna have in heaven. You know? If things are beautiful already here because God created them, in heaven it will be much better, much greater. So that motivates us to keep focus on God's will and not be too much distracted by the little pleasure of this world because they are small in comparison of what is there. And there, it is eternal. So say that, we have this passage of that Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, who affirms that it's important to look at the resurrection to get the strength to do the will of God. He says, that's a passage that Friar Giuseppe, a brother of our community, shared with us. And St. Cyril said, the resurrection is the root of every holy work, for the expectation of a reward gives the soul courage to do the good. And then he explained, indeed, every worker is ready to endure the toil if he turns his eyes to the reward which will follow. But the one who does not look to the prize of his labor will quickly collapse in mind and body. A soldier is ready to fight if he is promised gratification, but no one is ready to face death for a king who does not know how to value and reward his toil and pain. In the same way, every soul that believes in the resurrection rules its life with moderation, but he who does not abandons himself to ruin. Wow, that's a strong passage. So, we need to understand it well because, so many people say, well, if you do good, you need to do it out of love. You don't do that for a reward, no? And that's partially true because, obviously, the good that we do, we need to do it out of love, not with an interest, no? And especially without earthly interests, no? So we don't want to be influenced by someone who promises a position on this earth or whatever they want to give us. So we're going to be influenced by, how do you say, bribes. We don't want that, obviously. We don't want to do good just being interested. But what he's saying here is that God is going to give us the just reward. And Jesus is speaking about that. Even the Council of Trent is saying that who said that we should not believe in the reward promised to the righteous man, he's anathema. That means he's excommunicated. He's not Catholic. So the reward is important to strengthen the good that we do. It doesn't mean that we don't do it out of love. We do it out of love. But that love, understand that the love we put in doing good in this earth will be rewarded. That's also love of God. That's also out of love that God wants to reward us. Because it's a consequence of the good that we are doing. If you build a house, the consequence of putting bricks one on top of the others, the consequence that will be that you're going to have a house at the end. So the consequence of doing good is the fact that you're going to be immortal, happy forever in heaven at the end, doing the will of God until the end. So to be stronger in our efforts of doing good, of doing the will of God. And I think we are done. Maybe Tim wants just to show you some references that he had. Just to explain quickly. and I will just say a word right after that.
So very quickly, unlike Father, I couldn't put the references to everything I read in my slides for what I was doing. So this is stage 1, and then there's stage 2 of the references. Just so you know that I didn't basically make it up on the spur, I read through all this before creating this. So my only other question is, do you have any questions?
I want to thank Tim. He put a lot of work in that. And also it was the first time he was asked to speak in church, at least in Dulac and George, and that's not his normal job. And so yeah, we are thankful for him, and also for his wife Amy, who supported him.